Hey, welcome to the second course video for the song Rain from Sleep Token and their album Take Me Back to Eden. I'm musically malnourished and you're on my journey to go deep and wide in discovering new music and artists. In these videos, we do a deep dive into the lyrics and meaning behind the music. So let's get in, see what Rain is all about. All right, I want to kick things off with this annotation. It's a little bit further down in the song, but I really resonated with what was being said here. It said, I have seen annotations about this song being about toxic love or about a love that breaks the cycle of toxicity. I lean towards the latter, but with a caveat. This is a love that he feels he can trust, but he also knows it's risky to let someone have their hooks in him this way, to let someone in fully and to trust them 100%. He knows very well that it could be a false sense of security and that it all very well could be all just a game, but he wishes to lean in and take the risk of trusting her with his future. This is why he asks her to rain down on him and cleanse him of his pain and replace it with pleasure, because no matter how afraid he may be to fall, he desires her more and wishes to give things a real chance with her, to trust her completely, despite the fear that lurks in the back of his mind. To trust despite his fear is the basis of his true love for her, and her raining down on him to validate him and reassure him that his trust is being placed in the right person is how she can reciprocate his love. Okay, with that being said, let's go up and go through. So verse 1 says, "For so long I have waited, so long that I almost became just a stoic statue, fit for nobody." So I think that first part is just this idea of like waiting for love, or maybe even having encountered a possibility at times, but being afraid to take the step forward because of maybe past events or a distrust in yourself. And so you end up kind of becoming this, it reminds me of like trolls in the sun or a gargoyle or something like that, but just think of it as like a slower process, like little by little, through not opening up, through not giving yourself over to the ability to be loved, which also the ability to be hurt, is just turning you into this statue, this coldness, this hardness about you. And I think that's what he's saying, is just for so long I've waited that I've almost become this stoic statue and then fit for nobody. And I don't want to get in your way, but I finally think I can say that the vicious cycle was over the moment you smiled at me. I was really struggling with that. I don't want to get in your way, but that may be that idea that he's not quite sure if he's going to be the best for this person, or if he's capable of really opening up or trusting or loving. And so maybe it's this like, you smiled at me and there was this response from me, this desire, but I'm also kind of afraid of getting in your way. But maybe I'm feeling like you and what you have to offer and what I kind of want to become for you is maybe going to break this vicious cycle that I've been in. And then he goes on to kind of describe what she does, what her love does. And just like the rain, you cast the dust into nothing and wash out the salt from my hands. This casting the dust into nothing, I mean, it could go back to that idea of being the stoic statue, but dust to me would seem also like maybe this cycle he was in, this turmoil, this difficulty, this haze in a sense of living in. But much like it reminds me of pollen. I live in the Southeast, not sure about where you live, but in the springtime, like it's crazy, dude. I mean, you just look into the sky and there's yellow in the sky over the horizon. There's this yellow hue. It's just pollen everywhere. And so it's always nice when the rain comes and kind of settles all that down and it's just not floating in the air all over the place. So in the same sense, I feel like he's saying this idea of her washing over his life is like this rain being poured down that's settling this turmoil around him. And the washing out the salt from my hands, I've been trying to think about that. I'm like, is there any kind of tie back to this place will become your tomb and the idea of sinking within the ocean? Is there a salt on his hands from that? Could be the case. I lean more toward maybe something of salt that's on his hand from maybe rubbing salt in wounds, or I don't know. That one's kind of stumped me a little bit. I feel like obviously there's a tie-in to the same theme of casting the dust into nothing. I think it's a positive thing, washing this salt from his hands. It is this kind of cleansing, healing. So let me know your thoughts on that one. So he says, so touch me again. I feel my shadow dissolving. Will you cleanse me with pleasure? Obviously, this could be in a sexual sense. It could be a deeper, just the pleasure that you find in somebody's love, in somebody's emotional and physical affection. But that idea of shadow dissolving, I think it just reinforces turning this dust into nothing, washing salt from my hands. This dark side of me is beginning to fade, almost like as the sun is coming up, there's this shadow that I've had, and you're making that shadow disappear. Now here's where it gets a little tricky for me. It's that chemical cut that I can get down with. I am not sure here. I tried going out and looking for this idea of a chemical cut. There is the main one that comes up has to do with like hairstylists and something in that realm. Obviously, we get a lot of chemistry and science and things within Sleep Token's music. And so I don't know if there's, because you kind of have the cut in the sense of like, maybe I'm using this improperly, I'm not sure. But if you were to take a cleaning solution and dilute it, isn't that in some ways considered a cut? Not sure if they're the same thing. So there is that kind of form of cut, but then there's also like an actual kind of cut, a harm. And if she is this chemical in his life, that there is this cut that happens to him, which doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. I think back to a song from 21 Pilots called Tear in My Heart. And the whole idea of that is he says, you're the tear in my heart. And he's talking about Jenna, who's his wife. And the recognition that when she came into his life, there was this tear, this rend, this cut, that only somebody that you love can cause. And it's a good cut, but also this opening yourself up to the opportunity to be hurt because you care for somebody so much. And so it seems to me like maybe in that vein, you're this chemical cut in my life, but I'm okay with it because he says that I can get down with. Up like the moon and out like the hounds. Some have referenced a link to like werewolves, and it could, hounds, dogs, wolves, they kind of fall in that same category. It does make me think also of like Hounds of Baskerville, Sherlock Holmes. So I don't know, man. A dangerous disposition somehow, because here I think it is pointing to the idea of the ability to be opened up to hurt, to harm. It begins to kind of tiptoe that realm of the toxic relationship. but I'm not 100% running in that direction. A dangerous disposition somehow refracted in light, reflected in sound. So when something is refracted in light, it's when it's changed direction based upon the light. Hold on. Let's do this. So the refraction of light is the bending of light rays as they pass from one medium to another, thereby changing the path of the rays. Refraction occurs due to a change in the speed of the light ray or wave. So in physics, refraction is the redirection of a wave as it passes from one medium to another. The redirection can be caused by the wave's change in speed or by a change in the medium. So a dangerous disposition somehow reflected in light, but then there's reflected in sound. This is where I'm going to have to lean on you guys a little bit, because like I can kind of wrap my mind around what he's saying, but I also can't at the same time, and I think that makes sense to you guys. I'm coiled up like the venomous serpent, and generally to be coiled, is coiled the kind of offensive stance of a snake? Because obviously you have coiled and just like that, but tangled in your trance, and I'm certain you have got your hooks in me. And I know the way that it goes. You get what you give, you reap what you sow, and I can see you in my fate. And I know what I am. I know I am what I am. The mouth of the wolf, the eyes of the lamb. So darling, will you saturate? Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's got to be something in there of this idea of him recognizing that maybe he's not necessarily innocent, that there is this side of him that is dangerous, because the mouth of the wolf, the eyes of the lamb seems to appear to give the like wolf in sheep's clothing type thing. I have these welcoming, these soft, these innocent eyes, and yet I know what I am, this mouth of the wolf. And maybe he's asking, so darling, will you saturate, is the idea that her love might be able to help heal that side of him, because that's how it ends. So darling, will you saturate? And if you go up here, this idea of like cleansing me, being the rain, maybe he's saying is like, I do know what I am, but your love could bring some resolution to that. So then we have a repeated chorus, and then the bridge. Nobody can say for certain if maybe it's all just a game. When I open my eyes to the future, I can hear you say my name. And I don't know if he's trying again to kind of talk about himself or talk about her or talk about them together, if what we're doing is actually purposeful or if it's still just this game that we're playing. But I think the idea is when he says, when I open my eyes to the future, like when I think about the future, when I look ahead, I can hear you say my name. This idea of wanting to invite her into his future. So I don't know. That's kind of what I've been able to draw out so far. And then obviously the outro is just rained down on me. So he is inviting it. I would like to think again, like we read from the beginning, that it is this hopeful outlook, this breaking of a cycle. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. We'll have a conversation there. Thanks for being with me for this one. I think we made it through okay. Stumbling through it a little bit, but we'll get there together. Hope to see you in the next video. We're eating good.